Joining me today is somebody that I've actually never met, but he is with one of my favorite organizations in the world, and it's MEMRI, MEMRI. And when you go to X, you can follow several of their various channels. And you can also, your channel, Alberto, is Alberto Miguel F5. Like F is in Frank, 5 is in 5. So Alberto Miguel, I'm putting a Spanish accent on. What happens when people do that? Alberto Miguel, F is in Frank, 5. That's where he is on X. But Alberto, I've never met you. I am so glad to speak to somebody finally from MEMRI because my esteem for that work and its consequence to America, to Europe, to the Western world, and yes, even to the Middle East and Arabic nations, in particular, Arabic-speaking and Persian-speaking nations, or is that Farsi? But whatever, it's immeasurable. We only know, if we speak to God, how great your effect has been over the years. Tell me about, first, yourself. We started chatting about where you grew up, Florida, and, how you got involved in this and why you speak Arabic, and just give it to me.
Well, I don't want it to be the Alberto Fernandez show. Elizabeth, it's a real pleasure to be on with you and to talk about memory. Um, uh, we could talk about me and you can ask questions about that, but memory's been around for 25 years now. And it was a concept which our president, Miguel had, who also is an Arabic speaker like I am, a student of Arabic, that he noticed that there was a disconnect, that what was being said in Arabic was not being said in English. In fact, there was an infamous Arab Palestinian propagandist, Abdul Bari Atwan, who was based in London. I think he's still in London, who actually said, I say one thing in Arabic and I say something else in English. You're like, which, you kind of
Yeah.
understand, right? You're tailoring your message to your audience. But of course, what you're also sometimes doing is the message is very different in one language than in the
I've
other,
seen
which
it be the exact opposite with Yasser Arafat, for instance. I mean, that's a classic
yeah,
example.
he actually said the same thing. I think
Hudabia,
something, yeah.
yeah, yeah, he went to South Africa and he went to, some blonde nation in Europe. I'm trying to think of which country it is. I'm just joking. I don't know where it was, Sweden, Norway, whatever. Um, and he told the Hudabia story. I just agreed to this peace deal, and it's just Hudabia, it's Takia, and, there's no truth in it. I'm just giving basically the West what they wanna hear so we get what we want. And that
Yeah.
is so dangerous. Um, I don't think we have as great a luxury in the West of lying to people's faces. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and then turning around and saying another thing to a constituency in another language because we're always speaking English. But Arabic is not a language. It's not like Spanish. So many of us could just figure out what somebody's saying in Spanish. It would be so easy. But Arabic and is Persian Farsi? Is
Yeah.
that the same?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Parts, what, yeah.
yeah. Those are not languages that, most Americans will ever learn. I'm glad you have for the sake of national security and all the rest. So memory's been around for 25 years, and let's talk for a minute because there are people that have probably seen your stuff and just don't really know that it's connected with this organization and anything about it, or have actually never even really seen the videos that come out and taken advantage of learning from the work that you do. So go ahead and tell us how you do it, what you do for the people.
Well, what we are is, sometimes people call it open source intelligence. Uh, and what that means is, um, we're not, rummaging through somebody's garbage or looking, using, tools to hack into accounts
Eavesdropping and all that, you're not doing that.
because we don't have to. this is the words of the bad guys that they themselves put out. For example, we'll put a video on some crazed person at a mosque somewhere in Canada or in the United States saying some wacky thing. Well, he actually taped it. This person would have taped it. He would have uploaded it onto their account and put it out there for the world to see. So it's not like we're having to find stuff that is hidden. It's out there in the open. But of course, we have the experience. We know where to look. We know the background of who is this guy? What's his background? Why is he saying this? What else has he said in the past? Kind of drawing the link between a video and the speaker and their background stuff that maybe is about them in Arabic that is not well known in English. And so we try to connect the dots, as it were, with these figures.
Let me be
Sometimes
really specific, really, just zero in on something. You have people that are monitoring foreign language and actually, even in America and Canada, when they're speaking English, or sometimes even just putting that out there, or maybe speaking Arabic in America. But you take a video that is on Arabic language or Persian language news or just TV in general, you download it and you translate it by your big team of translators, and then you put it in English below with the Arabic if it's there. I'm working from memory just in my mind here. The Arabic or the Farsi's underneath it, and you've got the English. So both Arabic speakers can see it and see the English, but the English speakers can see this. And some of the stuff that I've heard and seen over the many years that I've been following you they have just floored me. And you know what? Let me just jump off onto this. What is it about American and British politicians, especially right now with the grooming gang thing going on in UK, that's 25, 30 years old, and it's like being talked about as if it's this brand new thing? I've been following it for decades, wondering, don't they understand, whether you want to believe is Islam in their holy book in the Hadith, the Quran and the Hadith, whether you want to really believe that these are applicable today for a huge population of Muslims or not, forget it. When you have people quoting the Hadith and the Quran saying they want to do unthinkable things of violence, of world domination, Islamo supremacism, Islamofascism, Sharia around the world, etc., how can they just walk in? Your stuff is out there. They have to know you're there, right? Do you ever talk to these guys that are deniers?
we have through the years. I mean, we're pretty open. We talk to anybody, and we have no, but we have a long history of talking to, for example, to law enforcement and to the intelligence community. If we for example, if we come across something which is a threat, right, a direct threat, which has happened many times. We'll see something on Facebook or we'll see something on social media or something which is a direct threat that, I'm going to go cut somebody's head off or I'm going to do something. We alert the authorities, and sometimes these are authorities that we have a long relationship with, and sometimes they're, people that we don't, and we just share it. In fact, even in governments that say maybe we don't like them very much, right? We don't like whoever's in charge. We feel it's our duty if we come across something which is a real
But
threat of
I'm
violence.
really talking about this. I'm talking about let's use the UK and America. I mean, we could use most of Europe. But if you look at the UK and America, the military I think years ago took out a lot of their training about what Islam teaches and how that is manifest in their foreign policy or their military actions or their terrorism, etc., and the kind of threat that it poses, and also in the area of how it affects the West as it's being, in a sense, colonized by Islam. But so there's the military, there's intelligence bureaus, agencies, secretaries. There is also the State Department, and then there's all the counterpart, and of course the White House. But they're all the counterparts in the British, say, governments. Just using those two
Yeah.
examples. Why do I not? Why do I get the impression that they do not take the words that are coming out of these men and women's mouths seriously, or think that it should apply to policy?
Yeah, I think what you put your finger on is a dilemma of the West. No, there's not so much them, uh, the Islamists and the jihadists. They're actually being pretty consistent and pretty clear. Uh, that we in the West have, especially, I don't like to get into politics, but especially among the left, among the kind of liberal class, which has so much power in the West, and there's a deep sense, deep ability to self-deceive yourself. It- Well, so they want to fool themselves, and they listen to people that are going to help them fool themselves, that are going to explain away the threat or explain away kind of violent language or kind of supremacist rhetoric. There'll be an excuse, and they'll rely on people that will credentialize or kind of up, give them a kind of sense that kind of ignore those things. That's
Do
not
they
really
still think that, um, they don't really mean it, they're just speaking to their base, they're speaking to the street? But I don't, yeah, it's such a self-delusional thing, but we need to make sure, in this new era, to be political, I'm a new dawn, a new age, it's a new life, and I'm feeling good, to quote a great song. And so January 20th is like, D-Day. Um, we gotta make sure that we stay focused in America, and I know you're not a political, you are a think tanky kind of a service where you, by the way, your analysis, I love, not just your videos, but I love to go in as soon as I have time. Memory comes into my email box, and I'm subscribed to everything, and I'm always trying to keep up with your rich content that is so informative, and I'll read your, analysis and white papers and blah, 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 and I gotta tell you, I am recommending this very highly. Take this organization, I'm sure you're nonprofit, right?
that's right.
So you can
Yeah.
always donate as well, um, and support them and use them. But I think that, what are the dangers? Danger is probably the wrong words. What should we keep in mind in this new era in America, and what's going on in Europe and Canada? I don't know about Australia, that there is an awakening of sort of a MAGA movement within many countries. So tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Well, that's a big question, but
Yes,
I agree
that's what
with
we're
you.
here for.
Think
I'm joking.
I think what's happened. No,
Yeah.
I think you're up right. It- there's a crisis in the West, and it's a crisis of identity. Who are we? What do we stand for? Uh, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be a Westerner? Or what? All of these things. We've gotten into this kind of rut or pit where, and I'm speaking in general, I mean, Americans or Westerners in general, where we've confused ourselves about basic things, about
Mm.
our own identity, about clarity, about what we're
Culture.
defending, standing for. Yes,
Who are we?
Steve Bannon said that that the politics is downstream of culture, and
Mm.
so our cultural elites have fed us this kind of toxic narrative, which first has many parts, but first of all, it's about how evil we are,
What?
right? That's a huge part of it, right? How evil we are. So, it's kind of hard to focus on, say, jihadism and these terrorists and stuff like that, when actually so much of the focus is about how awful we are. So fortunately, in America, after election day. And in other places in the West, there's a kind of a new sense that we need to understand who we are and we have value, and defending ourselves and being a sovereign nation, whether it be defending our borders or defending our worldview, is important. And we have
Immigration. Yeah,
nothing to be ashamed of
that's
standing up
right.
for our.
Well, not only that, I would say the irony is that the the diversity of cultures within nation states is a beautiful thing. It's a mosaic, a tapestry, whatever, of the world, and we celebrate it by not diluting every single nation so that we are a globalist, multicultural. So we have the same amount of French people and Japanese and Americans and Saudi Arabians in every country, right? So do we really want a nation, I mean, a world where there's no more Japan? Japan is as many other cultures diluting its own. So when I go to Japan, I'm not going to experience Japan anymore. It is an island chain, and there used to be a culture there called Japanese culture. And and see, to me, I think there's value in Japan. There's value in an America and a France. And I even see value as long as it stays within the borders of, you know, Saudi Arabia. I mean, this sounds crazy, Yemen or whatever. What I'm saying is, okay, I don't like Yemen for certain reasons, but I won't go in there and I won't insist that we send 20 million white Christian evangelists there to become citizens. And you don't export jihad to Europe and America. And so it's sort of like, I think that they would agree with that. And I think we need to keep in mind that our culture is as valuable or more valuable than anybody else's. And we better defend it as if we mean it. Like you're going to defend your wife, you're going to defend your house, you're going to defend many, many things, your best friend's integrity and character. Can we defend our culture, or is it racist? And that's what it's Islamophobic, right? That's really what it all comes down to.
Well, of course, that's just a label that people use to basically shut you up or to discredit criticism. But Islamophobic or any kind of phobia, right? We're in the age of fake phobias.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I think we have a right to stand up for ourselves, and there's nothing to
We
be ashamed.
must. Mhm.
Uh, and the American people, as a people, you want to talk about heritage Americans, and I was born in Cuba. I grew up in this country. I
Oh,
came as
you
a
were
baby.
born in Cuba.
Yeah,
Wow.
my family fled the communists in 1959, and
Ah,
uh, but I'm an American. I'm not a
yes.
Cuban.
Right. That's right.
I served in the U.S. military, and I swore allegiance to the American flag, and I served in the U.S. military.
That's right.
And so there's nothing wrong with that. And we've gotten into this sick
But see,
environment.
I think it's even a mistake to say we have the right or there's nothing wrong with. I think it's more we have an obligation and we have to ask ourselves, is the American culture something worth fighting for? And what I would like to do is take every student in America, say in their junior year of high school or whatever, put them on a plane and send them to a third world country. And I mean, we'll have to send a bunch of military there too, as well, to protect them, but let them experience living in an Islamist nation as an American, right? And being subjected to that. We have a culture that's not just worth defending. We have a culture that is glorious, and we should be celebrating and saying, and I'm not putting down France. It's not about that. It gets so petty. Let's go back to memory, though. We went off. It's my fault. I took us way down this other direction. I want to go back to memory. What value, not value, what return on investment have you seen over the years in the work that you've done in, I don't know, take a guesstimate, or maybe you know the number. How many videos have you translated and put out there, do you think, memory?
I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but it's in the thousands, in the tens of thousands
Oh,
by
tens and
now,
tens. Yeah.
with hundreds of millions of views. We have videos that themselves have tens, 50 million views,
Right.
you know, and and all the other content as well. So that the footprint of MEMRI is huge. In fact, MEMRI is now, it's 25 years old. It's so well known now that you even have memes based on MEMRI.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, funny memes, which are, kind of a, it's kind of a tribute, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of recognition that you become so famous,
Right.
um, that that people copy you. There's a great one if I can just
Please.
explain to you because it's funny. It's some kid, who knows who did it, right? But so they have one of our memory, scary looking guy with a beard, and in the first photograph he says, "And this man, SpongeBob, he lived in a pineapple house." And then the second picture says, "And how did he get this pineapple house? Through jihad." So, it's kind of making fun of these,
Yes.
people that we find, right, saying these
Right.
terrible.
But they're not
Uh,
strange. I've been looking for a video recently, and actually I asked my booker to, send a request. I don't know if she missed it or she got it, but there was a video. I'm 99.9% sure that it's memory, and this video was I thought it was the Ayatollah Khamenei, who was saying that he was very angry at America, and he was saying, I don't know if it was to Trump or Biden or whom, he was telling him, we will do to America, ready to do to America what we've done to Lebanon. We have Hezbollah um, in America already set up. And I have searched so many search terms to find that specific video. Do you know of it?
well, there's not one, there's several videos that are very much like that. Iran has produced, these, assassination
Oh,
videos,
yeah, but I'm talking those were really
Right.
great, I mean,
Yeah,
that you put out there, but where he literally said, "We have cells of Hezbollah
yeah,
already
yeah.
set up in America," and it was within this last year during the campaign, and I've been trying to find that particular one because when
Or something like that, yeah.
yeah, okay, well, I'll guess I'll just keep looking, but how does it work? Do you have, like, a secret headquarters somewhere, and you've got, like in the movies,
It's just a solid.
black, the guy's, Will Smith or something, he walks in, and there's all these computers, and there's headphones on, and they're just busily doing this, and there's is this great secret, headquarters someplace?
Well, that sounds great, and maybe we do that if we got more money. Uh, but you're not entirely wrong, is that we have people, uh, who do this, and they don't do it just because it's a job. They do it because it's a passion and something they deeply and strongly believe in, who are constantly monitoring the space, right?
Mhm.
Know where the bad guys are. We know actually not just the bad guys, not just terrorists, but
Sometimes the
kind of
good guys.
exactly. We want to have our finger on the pulse of what is being said on a wide range of stuff in Arabic, in Farsi, in Urdu, in Pashto, in Turkish, and just kind of see what is out there. I mean, there's some good stuff, as you just mentioned. There's a lot of bad stuff, and
It was
obviously
a
we
majority, and these are leaders. These are thought leaders. They are government officials. They're um, imams, of course, galore. But these are not inconsequential persons that are just, spouting some kind of violent rhetoric. This is real policy. Like Khamenei said, when we say death to America, it's not a slogan, it is policy.
yeah.
And, he was saying that because he wanted us to understand that he wants to take us out. And so why we would give him or allow him to have nukes is again beyond my imagination. But that's a
No, of
long
course,
story.
directly, yeah, he was directly contradicting these Westerners, the Kerrys and others of the West who say, "Oh, that's just rhetoric. That's just empty rhetoric. They don't really mean anything by it." And you have them say, "No, no, we actually do mean it.
Yeah.
We are absolutely serious about it. It's not symbolic or hypothetical. It's realistic."
Well, they put propaganda out there and on my ex account when I'm constantly, battling for truth, justice, and the American way. Um, I will often bring up something, show how it is a complete fabrication, say in the war in Gaza, in Israel, Gaza, Hamas, Israel. And I'll just say this is why the default is never believe any of it. You cannot believe it. The numbers were wrong from January 9th on or 8th. You have to first reject it and then see if you can find out if it is actually true, but never believe it. And so yes, there's propaganda out there that is extraordinary. Bots and false subscribers build it up. The anti-Semitism, anti-Westernism is massive, but at the same time, they do speak truth. And I don't know why we would infantilize. We're talking about men who are running armies and governments, and we're infantilizing them as if they don't know what they're saying and they don't ever mean it. Even in their own cabinets, in their own mosques, they don't mean any of it. It's absurd. So you kind of, I think your organization MEMRI has opened the eyes of so many people. It's a staple. And do a lot of your folks work remotely now?
Yeah, I mean, there is some of that because,
Mhm.
it's basically 24/7. And so
Yeah.
you have people in different parts of the world looking at the space
So do
and
you have
looking.
people then,
Yeah.
in the Middle East working as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Yeah.
And are any, Muslims or former Muslims that are on I don't wanna divulge anything that, I don't know why that would hurt, but I mean, do you have people from different backgrounds? Obviously,
Yeah.
you're Hispanic or Latino, and you decided to go and learn Arabic. So I just love that. It's wonderful. More Americans should learn Arabic, though I wanna learn Hebrew. Anyway, so around the world, your whole team, are they all monolithic? Do they all look the same? They're all
Uh,
from the same
uh,
background? Tell me about
uh,
it.
I mean, we have a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multinational team. We have obviously we have people in the United States, we have people in Israel, we have Jews, we have Christians like myself, we have Muslims, we have atheists, uh, we have conservative religious people, we have more liberal people religiously, more secular people.
Right, so it's
Uh,
just a big cacophony of, and variety, a myriad and a
yeah,
plethora of differences. I'm joking. Anyway, so we understand what you do and you put it out there. You're a nonprofit. You're also think tanky. So not only do you translate, but you actually produce backgrounders or in-depth analysis of what is happening, in any of your areas of concern. So who
yeah.
does that?
Well, we all do, and we all
Mhm.
have areas of interest, and we write about things that we know about or that we follow very closely. So, for example, I write a lot all the time for Memory. In addition to being vice president, Kamala writes. So uh, we have people in the organization doing many different things, and
Right. Many
as a
hats.
interest in a specific area. So for example, I do a lot of stuff related to propaganda outlets because I worked in the government, in the US government on propaganda issues. So kind of jihadist propaganda or Islamist propaganda or any kind of propaganda is something I write about a lot. Also in places where I've served, worked for the US government, like the Levant or like Africa, I write about those places. So I write about Sudan, or I
What
write
did you
about.
do in I wanna go into Africa in just a minute too. What did you do in the government?
I was in the State Department for 32 years as a
Mhm.
foreign officer. So I went to college, then was in the well, actually, I joined the military. I learned Arabic in the U.S. Army, then got out, went to college, graduated with my MA in Middle East Studies, and then joined the Foreign Service. Just spent 32 years in the Foreign Service, then retired and joined MEMRI. So most of my career was in the Middle East, but I also served in Africa and Latin America as well.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you speak to an Arabic speaker that's a native Arabic speaker, do they say, Will you sound like an American speaking Arabic, or is it like, because you've always got to have an accent, right? I don't even think it's important to get rid of it, unless you're spy trying to
Yeah.
pretend, but, or do you sound like a Latino, a Cuban American speaking Arabic? But I mean,
Look, I studied Arabic a long time, and I speak it relatively well. At the same time, foreigners who are not Arabs, and I'm not an Arab, they make mistakes all the time. So I
um,
will, and I make
and
errors every other sentence in what I say. And that's just Arabic is not an easy language. It's a difficult language, especially if you're talking about the type of stuff that we're talking about.
right.
Doing, like I used to go on Arabic television and argue with people for an hour in Arabic. Made a lot of mistakes doing that. But if you're good enough, you still can get your point across, and you can be more or less intelligible about what you're saying.
Do you know
But Arabic,
Mordecai Kadar?
I know who he is. Yes, of
Yeah, I
course.
love him. I've that one video of him on Al Jazeera from years ago is so hysterical. He
Yeah.
learned um, Arabic in high school. He's Israeli, of course, and went on from there. He's at Bar-Ilan University. But anyway, I just love this guy. But so let's go and focus on Africa, because
Sure.
we could talk about the Levant, but there have been maybe even in the hundreds of millions of words spoken and written, just in the last year and a half, on what's happening in Israel, Syria, Lebanon, Hamas, is Iran, obviously, all of these things. But I want to hear from you about Africa, because I'm so deeply, deeply concerned about Africa. I'm just sad that it's never on the front page. Nobody
Yeah.
cares. When I say nobody, obviously some people care, but generally speaking, nobody cares. And the slaughter of Christians, and both of us are Christians. I saw your cross in the background. So both of us are Christians. And so I think that, what do you think? Should Americans really understand the continent of Africa and what's going on there better?
Oh, absolutely. First two things. Number one, which I think goes very much to your point about Israel and about the world that we live in, the world's greatest humanitarian crisis today, the absolute worst, not even close, is of course Sudan.
Mm,
Not Gaza. It's not Ukraine. It's not somewhere else. It's in Sudan.
right.
Uh, Completely ignored, mostly ignored by the West. They don't care. In addition to that, when you talked about Christians, the 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 target of opportunity, or the area where jihadism is growing the most, killing the most people today, is Africa. Um, and it goes from West to Central to Eastern Africa. You have jihadist movements. Several of them are branches of ISIS, the Islamic State.
Mhm.
Some are Al Qaeda, and some of them are kind of unaffiliated Islamist militias or death squads. They all, they're rivals, right? ISIS and Al Qaeda are
Right.
rivals. They all focus on one thing, which is killing Christians. So there's a genocide occurring against Christians in Africa today. It's kind of a silent genocide, an almost silent genocide. And it goes from Burkina Faso in the west of Africa, across to Nigeria, then to Central Africa, to the Republic of Congo,
Mhm.
that coast, the east coast of Africa, all the way down to the southeast corner of the continent in Mozambique. There are jihadist insurgencies that are boasting of killing Christians, of breaking crosses, of burning. And you see the video, and it's heartbreaking because you see these churches, and they're like
Oh,
literally mud hut church, a kind of
mhm.
a shackle structure, which these are poor people. These are people who don't have a lot, simple people,
Ex
peasants or, farming people, and they're being targeted because they're Christians. Their churches are being burned to the ground. They're being slaughtered. They're being beheaded to this day. Um, and the great defenders of human rights in the West, the great kind of figures that pontificate about Gaza or pontificate about I don't know what, they don't have they don't give this the time of day. Now, there are several reasons, of course. First of all, Africa generally, because it's Africa, tends to get ignored, number one. And that these are Christians. So Christians, the suffering of Christians also gets ignored. So
Right.
you had Africans, and then there are African Christians. And then, of course, the victimizers. If the victimizers were the IDF or Israel or
Oh,
Jews, they would
hand me
would
over.
roar, right?
Yeah.
But because they're Islamists, jihadists who are slaughtering people, fi sabilillah, in the path of God, who are doing it in the name of Islam because they're burning churches, because they're, committing mayhem in the name of Islam, that that is ignored. So the the nature of the victims causes them to be ignored, and the nature of the victimizers causes them to be ignored. By the way, that's very similar to the whole rape gang thing that you
Mhm.
mentioned in A, right?
They're
So,
just, what do they
that,
call working class?
yeah,
They call it something else in UK, but they're working class white girls, and, like, who cares, right? They
and the
don't
victors, right?
right, oh,
So
and then the victimizers, yes.
you don't care about the victims, and you do care covering up for the victimizers. You want to minimize the exposure of the victimizers, of the
I read
perpetrators.
somebody today, or was it yesterday, where I thought they put it rather succinctly that in the UK, we're talking 25 years ago when this was starting, the fake religion or the cult of multiculturalism, when they abandoned the faith of their fathers and, moved to just dismissing faith, which is a vacuum that will be filled. And so they filled it with this a bizarre hoax cult of multiculturalism, which can't work. And then when you start seeing it not work on a scale and in an area that is an anathema, such as grooming, kidnapping, enslaving, gang rapists, going after little white girls, and they're helpless, um, that they had to cover it up because they've got to rescue multiculturalism because they had put so much in. Look, forget God, forget the Bible. There is no Jehovah or Jehovah. There is no Jesus. There's no, Christian, the Western culture and civilization and all that was built upon it is worthless. We have to go to multiculturalism, which then flattens all cultures and all belief systems as identical, and it's all going to be okay. And if you invest that much in that kind of ridiculous, fantastical absurdity, and then you find Muslim rape gangs where everybody in the culture, 6 out of 7 Pakistanis in certain cities they've already done studies on knew. They didn't even have to be the rapists. They all knew what their brethren were doing with these cartel-like rape gangs. They had to defend multiculturalism, and I thought, whoa. Yeah, so it was also not just multiculturalism, it was to mask the complete, utter disintegration and failure of multiculturalism.
Yeah, it was not just the gangs, the criminals that did it. It's the kind of those in charge who allowed it to happen. So it was like they needed to be covered. Yeah, you had to cover up for these Pakistani rape gangs, but you also had to cover for
For
the
multiculturalism. Exactly, for our religion.
who bought into this new faith.
Okay, so
Uh,
I took us off again because we're
yeah,
on Africa, and I really, I want to at WorldNetDaily, I have, an agenda for this next year that has nothing to do with this, but part of my agenda is I wanna focus more on, on Africa and some areas that Christians, Christian Americans, Judeo Christians, we should be knowing what's happening. I think it's a serious national security threat and global threat when an entire continent is being besieged and we're all just like, la di da di da. Let's just worry about this and that, but let's not worry about an entire continent be taken one by communist China with 50 some ports around the edge of Africa that they have built. And so they have that power there. I think it's 52 ports. And then we have jihadists that are slaughtering whole villages, burning churches to the ground, raping and crucifying, and actually selling people into slavery in Africa. So tell me what you think the threat is if we ignore this for too long. And is there something that Americans can do? And with Donald J. Trump and his team coming into power on the 20th, do you think that they're going to look at Africa differently and maybe take it more to heart that we have to work there? I don't want to be the global police, but I want to do the job of the leader of the free world, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be
No,
forever wars, but I want to do okay, go ahead. Just go with it.
I agree with you. I think you hit the nail on the head. There are people who kind of confuse the situation and think that we're gonna run everything and we're gonna, you know, continue with this crazy kind of expensive, both in blood and treasure, disastrous stuff that we saw over the past decades of these kind of, misadventures, whether it be Afghanistan or Iraq
Making
or
the
all
world
this stuff.
safe for democracy and nation
Exactly.
building and all that garbage.
I agree. But
Yeah.
but I think I'm hopeful, and I think I have real reason for hope that the Trump administration will look at Africa and look at the world in the correct way, which is not to recreate it into our own image and to kind
Right.
of to be missionaries for America. No, but to look at our own interests in a kind of cold, clever, smart way. So it makes sense for us to blunt China's attempt to kind of economically control Africa, let alone Latin America, right? Our own backyard. And it makes perfect sense for us to blunt the attack of jihadists because both China, in its own way, and the jihadists, in their own way, are our adversaries.
Yes.
So it's not about going off half cocked and going,
They're both imperialistic. They both
yeah,
want to rule. If they don't colonize the whole world, which they both actually do want to do, but they want to rule the entire world. It's a stated Quranic ethic, and it's obviously a communist China ethic. And so, what we see that's confuses so many of us sometimes, like we're thinking, how were the communists and the Islamists and the communist leftist woke liberals and the Islamists coming together and being frenzies. And we all know it's just the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and we'll kill you after we win this war against the West, right? So not to even
yeah,
go there because we know what's going on there. But so we've got Africa. What it is a continent that is rich in possibility, and it is failing. And all those nations that used to be colonies and had modern, like trains, tracks all over, and communications and government, that is all completely fallen in the last many decades. And there's so much heartbreak and horror there. We don't want a nation build, but we want to get in there and stop jihad and
and
slaughter and slavery.
we want to help people who are like-minded.
Yes.
There are more Christians in Nigeria than there are in Germany. Um, you know,
Wow.
in fact, there's a small country. It's one of the countries that is under attack by jihad.
So
Is
little.
Burkina Faso,
Yeah.
which is Burkina Faso has more seminarians, Catholic seminarians studying for the priesthood than most European countries.
Come on. Gosh.
It's also a country that's under attack by jihadists,
Mhm.
who are slaughtering people and killing people.
Do they wonder do they even are they even aware that we're ignoring them? Like, because I don't know what their outlooks I've never been to, say, Burkina Faso. But if I were a Burkina Fasan, if that's a word, and I'm looking
We're
out the world, would I be saying, like, "Where's America? Where's NATO? Where's whatever, the United Nations? Why aren't they helping us? Our girls are being raped and slaughtered." Do they wonder?
well, there's a huge problem, which is the way the West looked at Africa,
Mm.
which was a very arrogant way. We're all going to make you wave the LGBT flag, or else
Oh my gosh,
cut
that's
off your
horrible.
pay, it kind of
Yeah.
thing. Rather than kind of dealing with Africans where they are and finding ways to help them without us having to run things and pay
Co
for everything and do everything ourselves.
Right.
I'm hopeful that the Trump administration I know that they intend to practice a realist foreign policy.
Yes.
Help our friends, to confront our enemies, to use smart power, to avoid being stuck in some swamp, in the middle of nowhere, spending our blood and treasure where we should be spending it to help our own people in
Right.
North
But
Carolina
can't
or
we let me ask you a question about this. You're not a military strategist necessarily, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just talking from a common sense perspective because a lot of us Americans can actually just use common sense. We say, okay, there may be some things I don't know. But given that, um, it seems to me that we've got these horrible jihadists that are sweeping across Nigeria and Burkina Faso and all the rest. Why wouldn't we send in some special forces or a small elite team and take them out? They're murderers, they're genociders, they're genociding Christians in their own land. And what they
yeah,
I yeah, so why wouldn't we do these limited things? I know that on my side, people that are MAGA people, America First, and I'm totally there, don't want forever wars, and they're gonna be afraid that it's gonna be like, "Uh-oh, Vietnam." But if we go in there and come right back out,
yeah,
what do you think about that?
I agree. That's being smart. That's being realistic. Uh, it's not about, again, rebuilding societies or doing stuff. But we have our own things to be concerned about. But there's a lot we can do with the careful use of America's power. Again, I think we have to avoid kind of these foreign entanglements, as
Yes,
Washington talked, about it. We need to avoid foreign entanglements,
I
like
agree.
play. But there's a lot. America is powerful, and there are things we can do, and we certainly want to help our friends and hurt our enemies, as
Mm.
long as we avoid being, trapping.
The forever wars of the globalists, and I mean, they love war. So
Yeah,
we're not going there. There is no way we're gonna go there. But let me, ask you about the China-Africa jihadi connection. When I was studying ports, and I was studying the ports, Chinese ports around the world, and it really kinda got me upset, because what I thought about is this: isn't that, like, such an American thing to do? If the Chinese did something that I think would have been such an American common sense idea. One, instead of giving millions and billions to dictators for their Ferraris and Lamborghinis and their wives' shopping sprees, instead, we build a port that's a thing that's not going anywhere. We own it, and we say we own it, but we own it, and whatever that looks like, it doesn't matter. It depends on the project. And then we have a port. We control the port. We've done some great thing for that nation that has a shore on the has oceanfront property, if you will. And so we're making friends, but it's substantial and it brings prosperity, good relations, but it's not threatening or silly, or we're giving it to the autocratic totalitarian dictators. Why did China think of that, and why didn't America in
well,
Africa?
China thought of that because they decided to engage with these countries and these regimes where they are and not try to
Mhm.
remake them into our own
Yeah.
image to try to force them to be things that they're not. I mean,
Mhm.
I served, and I tell you that one of the countries I served in, where I was ambassador, the regime that is a dictatorship,
Mhm.
they're pro American. They wanted to buy American. They wanted American investment. The Americans didn't want it
Wow.
because, oh, this is a bad regime. It's a
Mhm.
dictatorship. You know, any dictatorship in the world. The Chinese,
But we
let's make
buy
it
Chinese and they're dictators. And
a way to help you. Whereas the Americans would come in. First of all, the Americans were never there. The Americans would not show up. They didn't spend the time on the ground. Talking about senior officials and stuff like that. You know, as Biden made a promise to go to Africa, and he just barely did it. He did it like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. You know, he almost didn't do it.
yeah, and gave a
Uh,
billions of dollars away. Just
and
gave it away, not like for a particular project or with any right at the end of his term. Insane.
exactly, it was kind of a perfect example of a U.S. misattention. Too little, too late, the wrong kind of stuff. Whereas the Chinese,
Thoughtless.
they're always there, they're always talking, they're always looking to engage, they're always looking to engage in ways that benefit themselves.
Do we have
Yeah.
ambassadorships in every nation, or do we share? Sometimes I know that ambassadors will sort of, I think one ambassadorship, if that's a word, uh, includes Venezuela, covers Venezuela in another ambassador's purview or something down
Yeah,
in,
and look,
yeah.
ambassadors almost everywhere. But the thing is, it's not so much the ambassador. You may be on the ground and you may think, "Wow, this makes really good sense." This country wants to buy, say, to give you an example. This is a real world example I'm going to give you. This country wants to buy Bell helicopters, civilian Bell helicopters that are made in Texas.
Hmm.
Uh, but so the ambassador on the ground may think, wow, that's a really good idea. It's good for America. It's good for American business. But some official in the State Department will say, well, we can't give it to, actually, this country doesn't want to give it. They want to buy it
Right.
from the Americans. And the State Department will say, well, we're not going to sell it to them because it has dual use. They may use it to,
But you know, the
commit.
crazy thing is that we have armed the Palestinian Authority to the
Yes.
tune of a full-blown military. We've even trained them in tactics using phones as diversionary measures that they never even had before we taught them how to use these things, which would, of course, be used against their own people or Israel. Um, and so we do these kinds of things, and then some dope behind a desk in the State Department, which, no offense, I know you were there for 30 some years, but is probably my most hated department in the whole of government, right? I don't know
What
if if it
some compare overseas?
oh,
It's
did
not
you?
a,
But you know the mentality there. What can we do for Africa? I think it's this common sense, and it's about trade, but it's all about not just squandering money. It's about using smart, I don't know if you would call it smart power, and it's countering China, which I know is in a deep financial bind. I'm not an economist, but I know that China is in deep trouble. So we should be right there and not blowing American money, but being strategic. And then let's look at the Christians. You know what gets me mad? When Muslims in a Muslim region are moving like by the millions to Western nations, but then there is no minority within a Muslim nation that is not under threat or being slaughtered or genocided. And I wonder, do we actually proactively say, no, the Muslims in Syria can go, to Iraq or Turkey or whatever. We're going to take the Yazidis in Syria that are being raped and enslaved, and we'll bring them here. Why do we not ever show a deference to a Judeo Christian worldview, which would obviously most of the time be Christian, in the Middle East and in these other conflict zones and say, well, we'll lift them out? Because my theory of it is this: in Africa, Africa, Christianity has been spreading around Africa. And I think that the Islamists are really upset about the conversion rate and the apostasy rate
Yeah.
and the fact that they haven't been able to take the entire continent and they're like on the run. So the jihadis are in there doing genocide. I think Africa could still turn or remain Christian or could for, fight back with some help. In the Middle East, there will never be a minority that ever runs the country that's not Islamic. Am I right about that? I mean, you're never going to make Syria Christian or again, right? You're not going to make Syria Christian again.
Yeah, the only exception is by law is
Le-
Lebanon.
yeah, yeah. But I mean,
Well,
bringing immigrants that are minorities, not Muslims, but minorities from the Middle East makes sense because they'll never be a majority there. They'll never not be a persecuted minority all over the Middle East, from coast to whatever, to India. But in Africa, I think we need to go there to help them a little bit.
Well, I think when you talk about immigration, you hit the nail on the head, which is kind of a bizarre situation where you import people who have a hostile view of the West, hostile view of the United States, who maybe are part of a hostile majority in their own country, and you bring them to the West, and in the West, sometimes somehow you relabel them as a oppressed minority.
An asylum seeker.
They were the oppressors back home.
Right.
Cases. I mean, there are a few exceptions of certain groups or certain individuals, but there's a kind of mind switch which happens. Look, we need to be exercising smart foreign policy, America first, but not America alone. And we have interests that we need to defend globally without being stupid, without being crazy like the Democrats have been
Mhm.
last 4 years, but also even before.
Obama. Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's a role for us to play while we avoid these kind of entanglements, which are not in our interest to do so.
Shouldn't President Trump, I've had some arguments online because of people that literally do not know history. During the Ottoman Empire, Russians cared about Orthodox Christians in the Levant when it was part of the Ottoman Empire, and French cared about their brand of Christianity, or Catholics probably, yeah, in the Levant, and the Brits cared about and so what they don't understand is when you have a particular religious foundation in your nation, which people think is illegitimate now, which is so weird, and your people are in other nations that are as minorities, the nations historically would. Their ambassadors, even if they're Ottoman Empire citizens, the fact that they were Catholic or Protestant or Orthodox or whatever, those various countries cared and protected them and stepped in often to save lives, etc. So should not we be restoring some kind of an historic sense of how the West, and like even be a model for these fools in Europe, right? And say, look, we care about persecuted minorities in Africa. We care about Christians because we were founded as a Christian nation. So we demand that you do not allow this to continue, and we will base our policy towards you on that. I mean, why are we? Let's be strong.
Yeah, you can do that, but you need, of course, leadership at the top to do that. What's usually happened, because I've seen it, uh, is a State Department official will go into a foreign government and they'll have a laundry list of 45 things. And number 42 is, hey, don't kill the Christians, because point of labor law and gay pride or something.
Yeah,
Or
great pride's up at the top, and then the
and foreign governments are not stupid. They'll say, well, what do you really care about? And by the way,
it's a
maybe
thing.
number one will be, who knows what it'll be. But they'll think like number one or number two, those are the things the Americans really care about. But
So
if it's
you've
like
seen this.
out the door, while you're going out the door, you say, hey, by the way, be nice to your minorities. They're
Stop
not.
slaughtering and enslaving them, right? So you've
They're,
actually seen this on the ground. You've watched this happen.
well, this is the way diplomacy all too often works in the modern ages. You come in with this. I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
You come this laundry list of stuff. You're constantly badgering your foreign interlocutor. You do this, don't do this, then do this. Um, eh, you don't seem. It doesn't seem like you're serious. You
No,
know. Um, Meanwhile, the Chinese or other countries are very focused on their own thing. I've often said our laundry list needs to get a lot smaller, a lot shorter. We do too much
yes.
in the world,
And we
actually.
and the liberals, I would say, because the Department of State is 99.9% votes and contributes to Democrat leftists. So we know where they stand, and there needs to be a little house cleaning going on, actually a big spring cleaning there. But my point would be this, that I because I love America. My love for America makes my heart break when I have to admit that our foreign policy, especially out of state and defense, is so screwed up. We bite our friends, we stab them in the back, we sidle up to people, nations like, and I want to be careful to say this because Iranians really care about this. This regime, that does not represent the Iranian
You're
people since 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran, um, that it seems that a madman on drugs is making the foreign policy. Is chaos part of it? Like offending everybody and failing everywhere? Is this part of the globalist agenda to just have America a failure? And so from inside of our State Department primarily, I see that we are literally making America look ludicrous and chaotic, um, and 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 unwise, just stupid. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've written about that. That we basically need to look at how we form our diplomats. Uh, there's a famous story of George Shultz asking a young diplomat, "Well, which country do you which country do you represent?" And they said, "I don't know, France or something."
Right.
He said, "No, you represent the United
I
States,
yes,
not country or whatever, right?" So, so I think there are many problems. Number one is bad leadership at the top, right? I mean, that's an obvious given, right?
mhm.
You have terrible leadership setting a terrible example. And then I think the way you form diplomats, where you recruit
Mm.
from, the training you give them, the marching orders you give them. As I said, they're also given too much to do, where actually they should focus on
The
the
core.
essential, the
Yes.
essential,
Well, do you
exactly.
think that, Marco Rubio will have a great agenda on this? Do you know Marco? And do you, are you gonna send him any emails with suggestions? I'll give you some ideas to send there.
Yeah, and of course, I'm very optimistic about him. He's part of the tribe. I'm a Cuban from Miami, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope him. But the key will be, of course, the team. And so far, they seem the names that have been mentioned seem very good. The team that he forms, and them forcing or impressing upon the civil service and the foreign service a compelling worldview of who we are and what we're doing.
Well, okay,
So,
tell me how you train. What I wanna know, because most of these people that go into the State Department, I don't know what kind of route they take from, from they graduate, they go where, and they end up in state. But the thing is that these people have been so poisoned, their minds are so disturbed with the leftist worldview, Marxist leftist worldview, and America hating worldview out of all the elite colleges, and I'm sure it is sinking down to the far less than elite colleges. So they come out of these universities, they are poisoned already. They go through whatever transition it is. They get to state. How do we arrest and reverse? That's what I want to know. How do we arrest? I didn't even think I'd be talking about the State Department. I was thinking it was just going to be memory in Africa. But how do we arrest what these people have been destroyed with? Because there are thousands that Marco's not going to know personally, and we either have to clean the garbage out of their brains and hearts, or we need to replace them. Is there a program? Do people go to State Department school?
Yeah, there are many training programs, and obviously that is for junior officers, and that is a key area where you have to kind of inculcate certain values,
Okay.
promote
Where
a
are these
certain
things? What are the names? Where are they located? Is it all in Washington or is it at
South Side.
universities?
It's in the department, and there's a whole training element. There's the director general of the Foreign Service, right? That's a key position that the administration will have to fill. The DG, and the assistant secretary of state for management, people in charge of training. You had people there until now, as of now, who are pushing DEI propaganda in department,
In
right?
Africa, in the Middle East, yeah, they're also all over woke DEI,
So
LGBTQ
so
stuff.
they have to make certain decisions. First of all, personnel is policy, but also programs are policy. And so, you talked about kind of cleaning house, and I absolutely agree with you about people, but also programs, right? There are things that we shouldn't be doing, or things
Okay.
that need to be restructured. You know, um, Even though the State Department leans left, there's no doubt about that. Most people are going to do what they're told,
Yeah.
not not because uh, not be, because that's the way people are. By the way,
Sure,
that's not
yeah, yeah,
that's
it's your
nature. I have a job. I want to please my boss. I want my
mhm.
boss to be happy. But if your boss doesn't know what they want,
Or they're telling
is
you evil, horrible things, then you're gonna
what
do you don't
what do
may not even understand a full let me ask you a question about this because 'cause I'm kind of interested, in this very, very much because I tend to kind of wanna look for where is the source and the foundation, because you gotta take that by the root. You can't just do all of this stuff, and lots of times we talk about replacing these guys or that guy, but the educational aspect of it and the priorities as well, like your laundry list, is so important. One thing I've just thought about is this whole of government thing where DEI and the green news scam um is like whole of government. So I mean you could have something like um the Department of uh Fish and Game, and you've got to do DEI in Fish and Game, right? And so everything, even if it's irrelevant, and so when you're talking about foreign service and you're talking about spreading DEI, it used to be abortion was the main thing that they wanted to spread around the world in contraception, and that was many, many, many decades ago. Now it's DEI. Firstly, that's a loser from the start. That's a loser from the start, but it informs it's like the foundational or the I'm mixing metaphors here, but it's like the glasses that you're seeing through, the lens, all of that. And so should we be replacing DEI and climate change, environmental lackism with America first? Like, in other words, you go into foreign citizen service like Schultz, but not Schultz, and say the worldview is America first, and we'll talk about the rest. So everything goes through that sieve.
yes, you do, and you have actually you explain it to people.
Mhm.
You said why this is what we want, and
Yeah.
there are reasons why this is what we want, and this is in the interests of the American people, and it's a result, by the way, of a democratic process that happened in
Yes,
November. So
BTW.
it's a completely legitimate thing. This is our worldview.
It's our
Uh,
worldview, and then it's Western. It's America first,
yeah,
Americans first, but it's the American culture and it's our belief systems, our values, all the foundational principles that are written out from the Mayflower Compact through the founding and thereafter in our Constitution and continued until practically, I don't know, I would say early 19th, I mean, 20th century. So what we do then is say, we have a short list. No, we go to the educational department. I've written this down because I love it. State Department Training Director General of Foreign Service and the Assistant Secretary of State of Management. That's just got to be. flipped on its head. You know, they hired all these billion-dollar DEA people and their programs. We just get rid of them immediately, day one, January 20th. But then we put in people who actually know what America first and West first and what a proper foreign policy should be. And do they have to reconstruct something from the ground up?
I don't think so. I think it's finding the right people who can convincingly enunciate and explain uh, our vision, which is it's reasonable to explain and
Mhm.
has deep American root. I think all too often what's happened is this is, by the way, not just in the State Department. What's often happened in government, out of government, is when the left is in power, the left pushes leftist ideology. And when the right or the center right
That
is in power, it doesn't push anything.
I know. It just says, "Oh,
That,
look, I don't." It's
that's what
nuts.
happens. That's
Mhm.
usually what happens, right?
Yes.
There's a problem. You have to explain to people what you want, why it makes sense, and hold them up to certain standards. Is a very reasonable thing to do. Most of the time, what's happened is we don't make our own case.
That's right. And
Leave the adversary.
so with the Trump administration, our goal at WorldNetDaily and my goal in this show is to highlight, um, in every question that I ask, in every interview, no matter what it is, I'm really concerned about what are we gonna do now? What is the most not principled and pragmatic and doable common sense thing that the Trump administration has to do? Who are the people, the policies, and everything? Because we don't have long. I mean, I don't even know how we have 2 years and, that we're going to not even have free reign for that. And so there are a lot of things that, we need to do, and one thing that we're focused on here that I think is so important is the State Department. That the State Department, with its missions overseas, Africa in particular, but of course it's across the board, that the State Department, 1, has to restructure its educational, program uh, for everybody, actually. New administration is a new dawn, a new age, and there needs to be a well, I hate the word re-education, but they need to be brought up to speed on the agenda. Yeah, exactly, training. That's right. And so then what we need to do is take I think that half of the programs that we're doing, like trying to take transgenderism across the world and make the world safe for transgenders everywhere, that's not our job. Um, but if we just boiled it down to a few agenda items, it would work and they would take us seriously. Besides Christian persecution, which is at a high point in history right now, what do you think the State Department um, policies or goals should be in Africa, Middle East? That, by the way, I like to repeat, MENA means Middle East, North Africa, because I want people to use that phrase so I don't have to say the whole thing out loud. And so for MENA, what do you think is the State Department's goal or should be?
Well, I think for first of all, I think that even though I spent most of my career on the Middle East, I think there's been an overemphasis on the Middle East in U.S. foreign policy.
Mhm.
Needs to be, for example, a greater emphasis on securing our dominant position in the Western Hemisphere,
Yes.
uh, in the Americas,
Right,
right?
Latin America and Canada.
I'm not saying the Monroe Doctrine, but we need to be kind of dominant, and that's where we need to confront the Chinese and others. Iran has, by the way, Iran has propaganda organizations working in Latin America to convert Latin Americans to Islam.
Oh,
But
I
let's
hate that
well,
whole thing with the
yeah,
can
but
you go ahead.
to,
Mhm.
to the Middle East, I think for the Middle East, obviously, avoid the dangers of over involvement. Empower our allies. Our allies, and this applies to Israel, and it applies actually to our Arab allies, especially under the Democrats. They don't know what to, right? Sometimes we love them, sometimes we hate them,
Yeah.
sometimes they're frenemies, sometimes they're like, I'm not going to have anything to do with you. part and empower our allies to do the heavy lifting for us in the Middle East, in an area which is important, but which we have learned that there's real cost to over investing in the Middle East, right?
Yes.
And so we
Mhm.
can avoid trap
So we
and
wanna
be
go to
smart.
Africa, Latin America. So Western Hemisphere, because I've been seeing what China is doing and, like you said, Iran down in Latin America, that is so concerning to me.
We have to strengthen our relationships in our own neighborhood, in our own backyard. That's the
Mhm.
America.
Yeah.
Africa is a land of opportunity. It's a resource rich place. It's a strategic place which is for grabs. And we might as well fight the Chinese and try to blunt the jihadists because it's in our interest to do so.
I have an
Uh,
idea. I wanna ask you a question. So these ports, what I wanna do is just basically take China's ports, but don't want to sound too belligerent, but they've got 52 African ports. And but here is, as I said earlier, you're you're in a partnership. It is so beneficial to the Africans. It's beneficial to us, and it keeps China out and blah, blah, blah. These are the kinds of projects we should have been doing for the past 40, 50 years. But I have one thought is that Africa's water problem is so terrible. And Israel has this amazing organization that brings wells, and it's all electronic, and it's very, very affordable. And then they dig a well because Israelis are great philanthropists. They dig a well, it's all electronic, and suddenly, right in the middle of every little village, and they're doing it all over Africa, right in the middle of every little village is now the girls don't have to spend 4 hours a day going to pick up clean water, and it's still not clean maybe necessarily. So, what about a project that we're talking about something so affordable, working with Israel and putting our imprint on these villages with American and Israeli flags right on that well, and it would bring such good it would bring life and love and and not war, but it's a good first step. What do you think about a partnership like that?
I think the idea of having partnership in Africa with our
Mm,
allies
yes, good idea.
that is a great idea. Not just Israel, but
Yeah,
Israel's a perfect example, right?
yeah.
Uh, and also it gets away to kind of another organization which needs deep reform, which is USAID, right?
Oh,
Which U.S. Agency for International Development, which has spent so much money doing crazy things that are not in the interests of these countries and not in the interests of the United States. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Finding partners, allies
yes.
that we can work with to counter the Chinese threat, to counter the jihadist threat. I mean, that's makes a lot of sense.
Okay, well, closing up, I would like you to do um, some hot spots. You talked about Sudan, and of course, we know what's going on in Nigeria, or we know what we know on the surface of what's going on. But tell me, why is Sudan never is that never going to end? Isn't there anything that America could do